All right, and with that report by Kevin Mutai, we get into the dailies with my panelists this morning, who together with me will be looking at the bipartisan talks that have stalled. Are Azimio's demands unreasonable? Are Kenya Kwanza operating in bad faith? We'll also be looking at the question of self-determination that has been threatened on account of statements with regard of shareholding in the company that is Kenya. Not my words, but those having been made by the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. And with me in studio this morning, from my left, you have Mark Bichachi, who's a communication strategist. Good morning. Good to see you. We also have sitting next to him Ishmael Nyaribo, who is an advocate as well as a political analyst. Good to see you this morning as well. In good health.
Thank you.
Looking well. And we had Fred Okango, who is also the Azimio spokesperson, also of KANU. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you this morning as well. All right, so we begin with the Daily Nation. Having housing levy unstoppable, President tells Raila. President William Ruto has stuck to his guns on the controversial plan to fund the construction of affordable housing, urging members of parliament to pass the Finance Bill 2023 in its current form, even as Busia Senator Okia Omtata vowed to challenge it in court. Dr. Ruto urged Kenyans to rally behind the proposed 3% levy, saying opposition leaders campaigning against it are earning up to 1 million shillings a month in pensions. And I see Raila Odinga quoted on the front page here. Kenya Kwanza has two options: face and listen to Kenyans, or ignore them and face a battle never seen before in this country. Okia Omtata is quoted as saying, the people around you, Dr. Ruto, are not telling you the truth. The finance bill has many bad things that violate the constitution, and this may end up in court. I have already prepared a petition to go to court. But this is the top story this morning. Ruto seeks 2 billion shillings to globe-trot. Taxpayers will fork out 2 billion shillings to facilitate President William Ruto's trips abroad if Parliament approves the budget proposals for the financial year starting July the 1st. The National Treasury has allocated 700 million shillings for the President's state visits, but MPs have now been told to add another 1.3 billion shillings. More on that on page 4 of the Daily Nation. Let me just flip over and see what this is all about. And here we are, page 4, this report by Edwin Mutai, and he tells us what we've already read on the front page there, but provides more details. And he says President Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua recently burst their full-year budgets in 7 months amid austerity plans aimed at reversing the trend of borrowing to fund government operations. And it continues to give a breakdown that the Budget and Appropriations Committee of the National Assembly has also allocated, let me see, 301 million against a 2 billion shilling request for state protocol and utilities that include United Nations General Assembly, Intergovernmental Authority Development 100 million shillings, African Union 150 million shillings, East African Community and the International Conference of the Great Lakes Region 150 million shillings, as well as administration activities such as cleaning, transport, fuel and maintenance of 500 million. Official data shows that 9.09 billion was spent by the Executive Office of the President in the period through January against an original full-year estimate of 8.64 billion shillings. This represents an over-expenditure of 450.11 million or 5.21% of the original 12-month budget. The ministry requires an annual budget allocation of 2 billion for state visits to cater for outbound visits. The Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee said in a report to Parliament. All right, more on that on page 4 of the Daily Nation. And more cash. State House budget doubles. State House budget has more than doubled to 8.85 billion shillings from 4.37 billion shillings approved under former President Uhuru Kenyatta, while Mr. Gashagua's office expenditure has been increased by 914.25 million to 2.63 billion shillings. The over-expenditure by the Office of the President came in the period Dr. Ruto, who took power last September, directed the Treasury to cut the budget for running the government by as much as 300 billion shillings. We've also been joined now by Arnold Maliba. Good to see you this morning. Now you can see me. Ask people who wear glasses. I think there's 4 of us in studio. Ishmael, you're the only one who has been spared. Machone. All right. So I will start with you, Mark. Just, the president, making the case for the housing levy against the backdrop of this report that Ruto seeks 2 billion shillings in next year's budget for foreign trips. Is it much ado about nothing? Because I'm seeing some of this monies will be going towards paying Kenya's commitments to the various communities that we belong to on the continent, right? Because, that's what I'm reading here. Much ado about nothing?
Well, there's the question, the elephant in the room really, is about what is President Ruto's economic philosophy. On one side, he waxes quite lyrical on issues of saving money and making sure that the government spends within its means. Then on the other side, there was a car issue the other day. There was an overexpenditure in State House and things like that. So he comes across as though he's preaching a lot of water and quite swimming in wine as well. So that's really where the problem is. The philosophy that he came in with, for example, to reduce the cost of living, he's not been able to live up to it. But if you read the finance bill, he's also increasing the cost of living. He's increasing taxes, but he's not reducing what he himself is spending. So that's really what the issue is. And if I was to give free unsolicited advice, because we were sent to the back of the line in the shareholders arrangement, there is urgent need for the government to stick to an economic philosophy. Are they going to go the IMF route, where it's austerity measures and it's increased taxes? Are they going to do what Kibaki and Uhuru did, which is to find their own Kenyan path towards expansion? We need to find economic clarity. And what that economic clarity will do, it will solve one of the biggest problems that Kenya is already facing. That is foreign direct investments and the amount of people interested in our bonds and our bills, because those numbers have been dwindling by the day. And if we are unable to borrow in the Kenya shilling and the dollar keeps performing the way it is, and then we keep raising taxes as we are and we keep spending as we are, this situation will become untenable. Because you can imagine, if every time the shilling loses value against the dollar, our debt goes up by billions of shillings. So already we are in a tough spot. So we cannot continue to live in this very confusing economic times where we are both spending a lot, taxing a lot, saying we are saving when we are not, sending Mudavadi to visit some nondescript country in Eastern Europe. Those kind of things are untenable.
All right. I'm almost afraid to ask Fred his thoughts on this one. But I'm looking at this. I'm like, have I misread? Because the allocations to the UN and IGAD and all of that, this states that the Budget and Appropriations Committee of the National Assembly has also allocated. So maybe this is in addition to the 2 billion shillings for foreign trips. But Arnold, I'll bring you in at this point. Could the president essentially, do they need to travel to woo investors, to market Kenya's products? Because the president talked about, even with the vast budget that was allocated in the last financial year, he explained that the office of the deputy president, for instance, he was funding a number of issues. So now he wanted to restore the financial protocols in that respect. And then he also talked about, when you're setting up a government, of course, there's some expenditure that comes along with that. Your thoughts on this issue as we seek to get Edwin Mutai, just for him to clarify to us on phone whether these amounts that are listed underneath here, that is the 250 UN General Assembly, 100 million IGAD, 150 AU, and 150 million the International Conference on Great Lakes Region, is included in this 2 billion shillings, or is in addition to this 2 billion shillings? Your thoughts, Arnold?
I think we need to begin from the point of the first presidential budget that William Ruto actually had was actually a shared one, because essentially it wasn't his. He comes into government slightly after, sometimes after the election. Of course, that was a financial year that was already in effect, but that is a small line that we don't need to look at. As the paper has actually put, and you've actually gone out to just elucidate, you would realize that when every time, and that is, I don't know why we want to look at it as if it's unprecedented. We've actually been doing that every other time, that wherever a new administration comes in, they organize government to actually fit the way they actually want to have it before they proceed. So over and above this, the office of the president is quite large. I know sometimes when you carry a headline like this, and it's important for all of us, especially those in the commentariat and probably even the guys in government who are doing politics, specifically those who really want to carry the mantle of oversight, should actually not forget that in the guise or in the name of actually fighting both bad politics and bad politicians, we shouldn't actually end up fighting our own country. We actually are doing that a lot of times. You will actually realize, guys, that every time we go out, how the positions we pick, they are so much about the country as opposed to calling out bad politicians. Like, for example, if you were to go to the details, and I really love, well, I know the boardroom politics, the editorial boardroom politics that decides headlines, especially coming up with splashes, is quite complex. And the wording there, Mark would actually tell you that you can actually see a headline going one way, but then when you get in, if you were to read it specifically, the original clickbaits were always headlines, even the days before you had the internet. So we speak about having an economic philosophy, but the economic philosophy is actually very clear in how the finance bill looks like. If you really want to look at William Ruto's economic philosophy, you look at the finance bill. So with all the noise that is there, but at least with the way they are pitching, you know exactly where they want to go. So if you have to look at this 2 billion, let me look at this headline. If you look at the 2 billion, do you know what it is out of the budget that we have? It is 0.0000071%, assuming that it's going to one person. Let's assume that it's going to one person. But be that as it may, I think this is necessary. There is never a block budget in this particular, the way we do budgeting since Kibaki came to government. We always do line budgets. You are always going to find an item to eat. So no one has got some huge basket where you can always draw money when and if you feel like. It's quite difficult, unless you are the intelligence.
All right. Yeah. You spoke of Mudavadi, Mark, and I'm seeing on the front page of the Daily Nation a smaller highlight there. Mudavadi is Ruto's ambassador at large. Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has represented the president in key foreign trips since December last year. But Ishmael, we are told, Fred, I'm coming. I'm coming to you. Ishmael, we've been told by the chief economic advisor, and that is David Ndii, that we need to look, as Arnold is saying, stop looking at the amounts, look at the percentage of the reduction in the deficit, you know, between, you know, what the revenue we're raising and the amount that we are short. Should we stop looking at the specific amounts and look at the bigger picture?
Well, it is true we should look at the bigger picture, Olive. But, and I don't think that's the question. Right now, how come life is expensive for the hustler and it's not expensive for State House? How come it is, life is so high in living because of the living standards to the hustler and not to the politicians? So this is the question. And when you say that the economic philosophy of Kenya Kwanza is so good, we probably don't have doubts about the blueprints. But how are the masses working with you? You know, you cannot say that I am going to South Africa to bring goodies, and when you go there, we actually suffer more, and we don't see the goodies, and then you say, you guys chill, in 2 years, it will be fine. So this, I think, and I like the way he actually put it, that we should not be fighting the country. We should not fight ourselves. But that exactly is what is happening. The government could be having best interests at heart. But if you are not going to work with the rest of the Kenyans, with the majority, with the people, then they will not feel the results you are going to bring for them. So it is important if you are saying that. Now, talking about these huge bills in the State House, there was a complaint last regime that they were losing about 2 billion every day, I don't know. Now, you said that when I come in, I want to make sure I rectify all these things. Then they actually realize you are repeating the same mistakes, but you keep reassuring people that no. For me, shortly after, you guys are going to enjoy. So you must put Kenyans in the same room with you, explain to them, and not only in rhetorics or word, but show them that, look here, I told you last time, Unga will come down. It has not come down in the first 100 days, but look here. Now in May or in June, this is now the price. We have already started with the millers, they have accepted. But if you keep, changing goalposts, Kenyans will actually get a bit tired. And somebody was saying the other day that if now Raila Odinga went to the people and said, hey, forget the servers. Now let me tell you, let's just go straight on, fight the government on the basis that life is unbearable. Nobody, no town in this country will not come up. There will be an actual uprising. Right. But as long as now you keep mentioning the political differences through the server and this other, now people become a bit reserved and they start to imagine that your intention is selfish. So Kenyans are not happy, Olive, not because they hate William Ruto. I suspect that actually the number of people who like William Ruto is still what it was in the elections, probably has increased. But there's one problem. William Ruto must resonate with the masses. Right. He cannot create good, great philosophical ideologies when the children are not eating at home.
All right. So we need to take a break, Fred, but we will come back with your thoughts on this subject. We'll also hear from Edwin Mutai. I hope by then I'd have gotten him on phone to elaborate a little bit further on his this particular report. And I laugh because there's a tweet Aaron Cheriot said after the headline that the Nation had on Saturday hitting at Raila Odinga. He was like, they're now getting ready to do us where William Ruto is concerned. On a light note, we take a break. We'll be back with more.
One thing that I feel like is really not appreciated as much is the forehead.
Ukiweka finger zako hivi iko 6.
Easy. Sasa tulieka hapa because we don't know this suitcase, this suitcase. Monsky is a hoarder.
This I came with the other day from States.
Serious.
Ebugoja, Shiro's fast flu shot.
Monkey. How dare you?
Who's the other one? Talk up, boy. Huku mtaani kwetu kuna tumbili mob, tumbili twingi.
Love is making me wise.
Kenya has yet to meet the demand for affordable connectivity for education sufficiently. While all 47 counties have fiber optic coverage, the last mile links to rural parts remain inadequate at a paltry 13.7% compared to urban areas at 42.5%.
What can be done to improve access to ICT infrastructure for connectivity?
Public-private partnerships. We can complement what the government is doing.
If you take the annual textbook budget and spend on the internet, we'll get it done very, very quickly.
The next step in the problem is to make sure that the internet is affordable to those schools.
Join the EdTech Mondays Kenya conversation on 29th May 2023 at 6 p.m. on NTV Kenya.
Pata taarifa teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go. Getting the full story bilangori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 111 111. Subscribe today and get your taarifa teke.
I'll give you anything you want, but just don't ruin my image, please. Don't ruin my image.
Mamu! Mamu! Boss! Nilo! Heshima ameingia. Hili game hatari sana.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
Cascadia Apartments at Two Rivers Development in Nairobi with a Madaraka offer till 30th June 2023. Price start from 9.2 million. Call us today on 0742 342 722 or text Cascadia to 22365.
All right, welcome back to AM Live, and we're just getting into the dailies. I did promise Fred that I would give him occasion to respond to this story on the front page of the Daily Nation. Ruto seeks 2 billion shillings to Globetrot. Your thoughts?
Thank you, Olive. When you read such headlines, you ask yourself if this is the same gentleman who campaigned on a platform of uplifting the lowly placed. When you read these headlines and when you see the reaction of the public towards this punitive budget, you ask yourself if indeed these are the same people who believe that they would want to secure the lives of those they call hustlers. Of course, they are not. They are not intending to. They never intended to. These are people who found themselves in office through rhetorics and lies. And I want to tell Kenyans, and we have said this before, that this budget, forget about even the 2 billion that now is seeking to Globetrot, as the media puts it. This budget is meant to punish the people of Kenya. This budget is meant to finish the middle class. This budget is meant to ensure that no one in this country can put money in their pocket, as they say it. Therefore, it's a bad budget. It is a budget that is a punishment. And you know what? Kenyans have identified their pain threshold. If you look at the reactions, already they know their pain threshold. They have said, if Kenya Kwanza manages to push and passes this budget, then Kenyans know what to do. But you know, I want to give an example. Forget about the 2 billion that Arnold says is a 0.0017 whatever. Let me tell you, we are at a time when even a cent is important to the people of Kenya because it contributes. It contributes to your disposable income. Now, the issue that they are saying, you know, now they are diverting the public attention using this housing levy that probably affects 15% of the population that are employed. Look at how it has mutated. Housing levy, Mara tax, to patriotic contribution. And yesterday when I listened to Honorable Ruto in Western Kenya, he now claims that this is a job creation scheme. So you know that this is a regime that has no plan. In every of his statements, his people, himself, they use the word plan. These are people who are planning how to plan themselves. Yes, that's what they're doing, because they don't have a plan. We have said it as Azimio, that for us, this is a bill that must be rejected. When you listen to the people who have appeared before the Finance Committee during the public participation, majority, 75% of them, have shown disapproval, have demonstrated disapproval of this bill, the Finance Bill 2023. They have said and told them that this bill must be amended. This bill is not good for this country. This bill is not what Kenyans want. This bill is not what their hustlers want. And therefore, it is important to Kenya Kwanza, or for Kenya Kwanza, to listen to the people. We have told them they have two options. Amend this bill by listening to the people, by factoring in the views of the public as a principle that the views of the public must make it to the final decision making in the floor, or face the wrath of the people. You know what they have told the people of Kenya? They have told the people of Kenya, Olive, that this one, you will take it, you want it, you don't want it.
All right.
Therefore, this is not a bill. This is a pill. It is a bitter pill that they are forcing down the throat of the people of Kenya. We want to see. And you know, one thing that is interesting, we keep on looking at this bill and you realize that this bill, it affects everyone in equal measure. The taxations, right from where they target the people who are earning more into 35%, you know, in Kenya, a single payslip supports the entire village. There are three things that you look at in today's current payslip. If you look at it, there has never been an increase in salary for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Number two, that payslip is choked by taxation.
All right.
Number three, that payslip is most likely paying a number of loans.
Okay.
This bill must be rejected.
All right. Speaking of what was said in Busia, and there have been a lot of numbers bandied about this morning. There's a 0. What was it, Arnold? 0.what%?
0.0000071%.
There's 75% that Fred has calculated with regard to submissions before the Finance and the Planning Committee. Yes.
Just a moment. You know, like I said earlier on, let's also be very fair. What does this finance bill deviate from the standard way of how we've done things? Literally, the only new thing that is being introduced here is actually the housing levy.
That's not true.
The new deviation from how we've done it. Why I say that, let me just execute this point, because I was actually responding to Fred.
Mark, I'll give you an opportunity to respond as well.
So that we build up this particular conversation. Also, it's data, and this is a lawyer. Of course, we know that lawyers are bad mathematicians. But every other person who is employed supports directly or indirectly 8 people. He can get that data. It's available, not a whole village. And 16 million Kenyans are in the informal sector. Literally, the cogs of this economy runs on the informal sector. However gray it is, of course, when you talk about a gray economy, as it means that the numbers are mishmash. But then there are 16 million people who are making a livelihood there. The only people who are salaried are about 3 million people. You wouldn't say that as a nation. Honestly, those are the people who shoulder everything. Besides, of course, pay-as-you-earn being the biggest part of what KRA collects. So, like I said, let us also be too careful in the name of oversight and calling out government and calling out bad politicians to not end up fighting our own country, because that's what we are doing. Because you cannot reject something like a finance bill in totality. It's too big. He hasn't told you even a 0.001 of it, and he's telling you reject it. If you asked him if he's read it through, he might not have actually done so much about it. So something like a finance bill, you apply pragmatism. You cannot 100% say that the whole thing is bad. That's not true. It has got a lot of good things. It might have a lot of other things that are not good. What we agree... Okay. Olive, let me finish with this.
I want us to move along to the
let me put this on the table so that they don't continue bringing it up. That's number one. All of us agree that the cost of living is unbearable. Everyone, whether you are the government itself or not. That cannot be the basis upon which then we reject the finance bill in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ishmael, I know you shot were fired when you said lawyers are not good at mathematics. But let Mark respond and then I'll come to you.
You know, I just want to correct Arnold that there are many new things. One of the new things is the fact that on insurance claims, when you hit your car and your insurance is paying you back, you are going to be taxed on that. That's a new thing. There's new taxes on the internet and internet services and products. There's new tax on fuel proposed. There's new taxes on turnover and not on profit. So there are very many things that are new that make me as a fledgling businessman very uncomfortable, and that is not me not being patriotic. Patriotism has nothing to do with agreeing with higher taxes. The most patriotic American does not want to pay that much taxes. So let's not guilt trip people here for airing their opinions. And I think that is very wrong.
Yeah. Ishmael, the last word on this one, please, Fred.
Now, I think taxation is not necessarily bad. And nobody, I think many of us who come to the media are not saying finance bill wholesomely, all the amendments are bad. No. Any amendment must go through public participation. That's number one. And the people must give their views. And if they decide that 95% of these amendments are not acceptable, it is the people's choice. So you cannot say, mpende msipende. That's one. Number two, taxation is good. In fact, if you look at what happens in Europe, even South Africa, in the Americas, people are heavily taxed. There is no doubt about that. But Olive, here is a difference. In the UK, for example, you are above 60 years old, you will use the rail transport free, of course, at a certain time when it's not rush hours, because your tax has been taken to finance your operations. What has changed in the country, Olive, so that you reassure Kenyans that now we don't have corrupt people in government, when KEMSA, before Kenya Kwanza, had major issues, and after Kenya Kwanza has had major issues. In fact, a PS has been, kicked out of office, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a PS, isn't it?
Yes, Principal Secretary.
So, what's the difference? So, what people are asking is the way people are moving within government does not convince the citizens that the taxes you want to raise, the amount of money you want to get from workers is actually going to be put into proper use. That is not, already we are not convinced. Why? Because even unga cannot come down, life, living standards has gone high. So how, you've not shown people that actually if I can get 4 trillion in this budget alone, this is what I will do with it. Everybody is suspicious about it, but you're telling people spend them, spend it. So I think that's where the fight is.
All right, and Fred, I know, okay, I'll ask you to answer 2 questions back to back. 1 quick second. There is something you said about, even in your first submission, about that this government committed to end the 2 billion shillings where we lose daily that former President Uhuru Kenyatta talked about. I'm not entirely sure they did commit to that. I know they talked about eradicating cartels. But anyway, I'll allow you, Fred, to respond. But first, I wanted to look at something else so we can move the conversation along as well. There's a tweet I had mentioned earlier, and this one is of Aaron Cheriot saying, if you see Ad Nation Africa run a negative headline on Raila like today, you know that the next day or two they've prepared something fake and worse on President Ruto. Why can't they gather the courage and just register as a political party? But it's actually this next tweet of his that actually moves us along with the conversation. And this is an NTV Kenya tweet that he retweeted. And that is of President William Ruto saying, Mimi sio wazimu, huwa silewi. President Ruto insists on the proposed House Levy Finance Bill 2023. It's what you'll see at the very top of the Daily Nation here. Housing levy unstoppable, President tells Raila. Even alongside, I see another story, questions Azimio raises red flag over multi-billion shilling school cooking gas project. And we'll get into the President's statements in Busia shortly. Who is it? Arnold says, you guys have not read the finance bill, but there's a guy called in entirety. You said they've read 0.0 whatever percent, 1%. But there's a guy called Okia Umtata who says he has read it. He has read the entire thing. And he has told the president, tukutane kotini. That is the headline on the front page of the Taifa Leo. Senator Umtata amkabili Ruto ana kwa ana kuhusu makato ya 3% ya nyumba na ushuru mpya. Ninasema wewe ni rafiki yangu, lakini mbele ya katiba ni rafiki yangu mkubwa kuliko wewe. Nimeangalia mswada wako wa fedha na vipengele kama 6 vinahitilafiana na katiba and mapambano apinga mapendekezo yaliyomo katika mswada wa fedha wa mwaka wa 2023 yanayokusudiwa kuongeza ushuru hasa kwa maskini. Matamshi yake yaibua hasira miongoni mwa viongozi wa Kenya Kwanza, and he stood on the podium and he told the president, these people who spoke before me are lying to you. It was interesting to see Amos Wako, present at that event. He called him Your Excellency. He told him, we wish you the best. And it was interesting to see that, because you will recall the affidavit by Wafula Chebukati with regard to the role the former Attorney General played at the Bomas of Kenya, exerting pressure for him to declare Raila Amolo Odinga as the winner of the 2022 general election. But Fred, your response to Arnold's submissions on lawyers not being very good with the mathematics, now that we're talking about Bomas of Kenya, as well as the president saying, as Ishmael put it, not verbatim, but essentially impendem stipende, this housing fund thing is going to go through.
I will not waste Kenyans' time responding to that, because they are watching this show and I have important things that I need to respond to.
Go ahead.
But just to reiterate what Mark Bichacha said, how different this bill is, the attack on the digital economy, and I started my discussion by saying this is a regime that promised the young people. They gave them a lot of hope. Majority of the young people are in the digital economy space, where they're innovative and creative. These gentlemen and ladies of Kenya Kwanza have proposed a withholding tax of 20% from 5%. This Kenya Kwanza regime have proposed a 25% deposit payment of the disputed tax on the Amendment of Tax Tribunal, Tax Appeal Tribunal Act. These KK have proposed a 16% VAT on petroleum products. Do you know what that means, Olive? Me, you, him, and many others will have to pay more on anything that is manufactured using petroleum, because life is going to go high. These people have proposed a taxation on the per diem and reimbursements by for their own government officials. When you travel, you'll have to be taxed on that per diem. Now, we are saying that kulipa ushuru is kujitegemea. That is okay. That is good. We must pay our taxes. But we are saying these are people who are collecting more. And I want to remind Arnold of a biblical verse, because I know he's a Christian. When the taxmen came to John the Baptist, and they asked John the Baptist, "Teacher, what do you want us to do? We are tax collectors, we have come to you." When John the Baptist was preparing for the coming of Jesus, you know what John the Baptist told them? Go, but not collect more than you should. We are telling these people that while it is true that we must pay taxes, we shall pay, we will pay, but don't collect more than you can, because you are making the lives of Kenyans difficult. Now, to respond to the issue of Western Kenya on Amos Wako. By the way, Amos Wako is a good man. He's a personal friend, so I wouldn't want to really blame him for calling Honorable Ruto the president and saying you will support him. That is his right. It is political right in Article 38. We don't disagree on that front. But it is important that our leaders tell the people the truth. I like Okiya Mtata. He was categorical. He said, Honorable Ruto, you're my friend, but on this one, the Constitution is more friend of mine than you are. And the majority of the people have told Kenya Kwanza the same thing. They have told them that this is where we draw the line. In this bill, we have identified a lot of issues that are going to affect the lives of Kenyans. The people of Kenya come sovereign. They come first. If indeed there are people who are friends to Honorable Ruto, they should tell him that when this bill passes, he stands a chance to have problems, because the people will reject it. The people will rebel. I am sure that as Azimio, we want the best for this country. And again, I respond to Arnold when Arnold said, we should not bash the government so much. We are saying the reason why we want our country to succeed is the reason why we are speaking. If we don't speak, then we want this country to go down south.
Okay.
We must speak, and we must speak with a solution. We are offering a solution. We have said in the coming days, we shall give people the alternative budget. In the coming days, we shall give people the people's budget. In the coming days, we shall tell our supporters and Kenyans large why this bill is not good for them.
All right.
That is a promise that we are making. It is, in fact, a commitment.
Okay. Speaking of taxes, tunataka tumalizane na mambo ya ushuru, but we will now transition towards our topic of conversation, and that is to do with the stalled bipartisan talks. And part of the reason they are stalled is this Finance Bill 2023, because the Azimio has been saying the cost of living is simply too heavy. Tax pressure piles. President William Ruto, and this is the Standard, President William Ruto faces build-up of political hurricane in the coming days from threats of street protests by a resurgent opposition, a former president who has refused to leave political stage, and Kenyans who have rejected new tax measures. Few days to reading of the budget political headache. The gentleman is on the front page there. The expression is on his face is one of him mulling, I suppose, his options. Ruto enters into the week facing opposition from Kenyans over the housing levy and the proposed finance bill that seeks to increase taxes on essential goods. Two, Azimio Parliamentary Group meets on Tuesday under the leadership of Raila Odinga to strategize on how they will fight government proposals for more taxes. Three, opposition could rally its supporters to the streets this week after deadline for its demands to be met on bipartisan talks expires on the day for national prayers. And former President Uhuru Kenyatta's return into active politics and closing ranks with Raila could mean more political trouble for Ruto. And speaking of former President Uhuru Kenyatta, Uhuru sells handshake to Africa leaders. He was in Nigeria, and more on that on page 5 of the Standard. And politicians at heart of T-wars and rift, U.S. parties in deal to raise debt ceiling. This is the front page of the Standard. Clergy MPs push government to halt Mungiki resurgence. The cleric and politicians in Mount Kenya. Clerics, I assume, and politicians in Mount Kenya are worried. Recent events point to a return of the dreaded sect, with the DP promising to act. Azimio has taken the position that government institutions are being weaponized against their supporters. I thought I had opened the Star, which actually, and I should have, because it informs the topic of conversation this morning. And here it is. It reads, big clash as Ruto-Raila dialogue faces collapse. Ultimatum, Azimio threatens to completely dissolve 14-member talks team by Tuesday. Stage set for showdown as the two sides tussle over controversial finance bill. An image here of the president in Busia, all laughs. Sitting next to him is the governor, Paul Otuoma. The president makes case for new tax proposals. Yes, so let us now get substantively into the topic of conversation. But I did want to look at pages 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation, still because it's still related to this housing levy and taxes and the bipartisan talks. President teacher unions meeting end in stalemate. Teachers have asked for salary increase to cater for the housing deductions. President tells teachers representatives affordable housing project will benefit young people. The president has made up his mind on the finance bill that it must be passed. We made our submissions and he made his, but we didn't agree on a number of things. This is a Kuppet official being quoted. And when I look at the next page, importers warn of rise in fish prices if new tax plans are implemented. I looked at the front page and I saw that they told us that the cost of fish could go up to rise by 50%. Fish prices to rise by 50% on new tax. And we've gone roundabout also to this issue as the new MPs raised the red flag over schools. Cooking gas project to provide LPG to schools has the hallmarks of a major scandal that is waiting to unfold, lawmakers claim. If you'd like to get more into this, report by David Umwere, do purchase your copy of the Daily Nation. You can go to epaper.nation.africa, find either the Taifa Leo Daily Nation, Business Daily, etc. But round back to this topic of bipartisan talks, and one of the issues again is the cost of living. Why do you think, Mark, that the president has really dug in on this housing levy issue, that it's not something he's willing to talk about? They tried explaining it, right? The housing PS, much to the entertainment of some Kenyans, attempted to address some of the concerns that have been raised about it. But the government doesn't seem to be budging on this issue. He met parliamentarians last week. He told them, you know, we are collaborating. in this government?
You know, there are two things that will shock people. First and foremost, I am a believer in affordable housing. I'm not saying I support the plan as currently put, but I think, genuinely think that the country of Kenya needs affordable housing. If we don't do something now, the people who are in their 30s and in their 20s now will not be able to afford a single unit in Mathare in a few years. We need to do something about affordable housing. But the issue here is this, that whether it is in the talks between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, or it is how the government is responding to the cry of the people, there is a big mistake that is happening. Kenya Kwanza needs to be reminded that when they were running for office, they had the ear of the people. They spoke to the people peaceably, they gave comfort to the people of Kenya, and they gave them hope. Let me give them free advice. An army marches on its stomach, and a country is run based on the hope the leadership is able to give them. The harsh rhetoric, the pushing things down people's throats will hurt them more than how good an idea they have. That's really the problem here. They have become extremely tone deaf. And I want to remind them how the nation of Israel landed in trouble. After Solomon died with his wisdom, he got a son who was a bit unwise. And the Israelites gathered before him and asked him, will you tax us and be as harsh as your father was? And the elders told this young man, listen to the people and do what they want, and they will let you rule over them all the days of your life. Then he went to speak to a few young people, and they told him, please be tough, Bwana. You must have some iron fist on these people. And then he went and told the people that my little finger is going to be heavier than my father's hand. And that is how he lost the people of Israel. I am speaking as a communication expert. The housing issue in this country is a sensitive issue. People living in Kibera and people living in Karen want to be able to have those houses cheaper. Everyone does. But not at the level of rudeness and kindness and not listening to us that is happening. Further, when you want to say you are talking to people, and then you've decided people like Mark Bichachi, who supported Azimio, are at the back of the line, which people are you talking to? Have you created another Kenya for the back of the line for us to go to? Then number three, you're saying that you want to talk to Azimio. You don't want Maandamano. Then at the same time, you are sponsoring the demise of Jubilee. Let me tell you, there are certain fights when you have power. You have to choose what to fight. You know, when my son was 2, he would come to me when he just starts speaking and ask me, Daddy, are you as smart as you claim to be? Now, do I start fighting with my 2-year-old to prove to him I am smart? No. When you have power, power is exercised when you know the restraint of when not to use it. So when you're fighting Jubilee, you are undermining your own talks and you're being rude to the same people who voted for you, and you're being tone deaf to their needs. This is not an Azimio position. You're shooting your own self in the foot.
All right. And Ishmael, I would like you to come in on the subject of self-determination, because the question of shareholding has come up. And the president, speaking in Busia yesterday, was like, you know, this is a government for all Kenyans. We are working for all Kenyans. You know, I came to Busia despite the little vote you gave me because, you know, we are working for all Kenyans, whether they voted for us or not. And that could that be, in your view, a reaction, a direct reaction to what Raila Odinga said? He said, you know, if Kenya is a company, and we are all paying taxes, but we are not equally entitled to government jobs, then we might as well write to the UN. He gave, I think, a week and said they would write to the United Nations on the question of self-determination. But Arnold, I want you to just respond to what has been raised by Mark on this housing fund levy. The president now, the narrative now is that this is really not about savings, as we had been told. This is now about the well-to-do are denying other Kenyans the right to jobs through the construction of these affordable houses. Your thoughts on that? As we do that, can somebody please stick this paper under Mark's table? I saw it was a bit wobbly and it was distracting him. I think he was afraid his coffee or tea will pour over his papers. Arnold?
Actually, Olive, just allow me, even as I respond to that, because as we took the last round of conversations, there were new issues that were introduced. And to allow them sometimes to go and respond to is actually to do injustice to our listeners. First of all, when I spoke about deviations, I was talking about deviations from the standard way we've done it, the traditions of how we've done it. If you look at this, as in there is hardly a new budget, or rather a tax line that has not been there before. So when I spoke about deviations, I wasn't just talking about tweaking of percentages here and there. Because when you speak about an increment on, I think it's the VAT on fuel, haven't we been there before? Yes, we have. Is it unprecedented, like I said? It's not unprecedented. Mark spoke about taxing the income tax on content creators, specifically the digital space. Government actually has got data, and that particular sector that we are looking at and saying that it's actually so bad is actually bringing in very good money. Until the other day when is it ChatGPT and the Google's alternative, the AI bit of it came in, and that's also another thing we need to focus on to see actually how technology then takes away jobs. Kenya was actually leading in, when you talk about academic writing and all that sector, people are making very good money on that particular end. But we also know that in the future, anything that is actually AI generated will not be probably on Google as content. It will actually be flagged down. So there's still the place of the human touch. So that particular element, the digital sector, is actually bringing in very good money. And since everybody else is supposed to carry their own share of taxation, it was only fair that we are looking at the numbers, because at the end of the day, we have got a national payment system and we see how much money is coming in. So why would we pretend that there is no money here when there is money that should be taxed? Everybody should be. I know no one is happy to pay taxes, including myself. No one loves paying taxes. At some point when I was working in the US, I remember going to buy a watch, and after I had bargained, the lady reminded me that, remember, we are Americans, we pay taxes, not because we like it. So no one loves paying taxes. So talking about where we are today and how everything is going out there, you know, the opposition and people opposed to the finance bill are actually gaslighting the nation and are gaslighting the administration. They are making us question whether we are even Kenyans. And that particular way of manipulation is actually not so good. You know, it's easy to talk about consultations. And you know, consultations are not necessarily concurrence. That when we consult Olive on an issue and you do not concur, doesn't mean that we have to stall. What is happening is that there is a segment of a few people who really just want to ensure that we do not move forward. And this is their way of doing it. That first of all, they introduce a lot of moving targets where you can never settle. The issue of the server, for example. Do you know that there is no way of addressing the server issue without necessarily opening up a new front? When you are just about to open the server, they tell you we have got Jose Carmago in somewhere in Samburu and they are manipulating it. Yesterday, I had somebody talking about 2,000 hackers who are in the system and they are now already manipulating. So even if you opened up the server, that is a moving target. It's never going, we are going to be around here forever. So if you cannot win the election, it was rigged. If that particular argument doesn't stand, you say now you want to have your own country so that you can rule it. We will keep on at this. The whole idea here is to forestall any progress. Speaking about the housing levy, I don't want to go into so much details the way you actually said that. I should actually just say this. And Mark, the good thing about Mark is that Mark knows the truth when he sees it. You might not like him for that, but the truth is that we need, he spoke about affordable housing, and I will tell you, affordable housing is not enough. We need social housing as well.
Okay. Because,
just quickly, number one, 97% of Kenyans earn 100,000 shillings and below. So if you were to do a national average using the what is reported in the pay system, then it means no Kenyan should pay rent beyond 30,000 shillings, saying that we have got that precedent that you shouldn't use more than a third of your rent to pay tax, to pay a third of your salary to pay rent. And Kenyans pay rent. But then if you look at the market, the housing market, it's broken down. It's not working. How can we get to this particular place? We have got a population that is faithfully paying their rents when they can. And they have always done that. That is why the housing, the bubble goes on.
Okay.
So we are at a place where the people we have left, and a lot of things, to have a country running, there are a few things that you have to get right. No one will tell you that 60% of Nairobians live on 5% of the landmass.
All right. So
and I'm actually quoting data that is there, and even Baba has done that. Why I say about people who want to run with the hares and hunt with the hounds is that both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio had the housing levy in their manifestos. The only difference is the percentage.
Okay.
But the cost of living is not high in 2022 when there is a handshake, but it's actually higher in 2023 because they are out of government. The housing levy is bad. Can I finish? Can I finish? Please protect
2
me.
seconds, please.
Remember, there are 3 of them. So, you see, I was talking about the housing levy, the house of levy. As in the people who are, the 3 of them that were raising their hands, I don't know what they are saying. So, this is the point that you have, you have the housing levy in their manifesto, but now that it's Kenya Kwanza that is actually pushing through, it's actually wrong. We cannot achieve substantively this housing problem if we don't do something like a provident fund, leveraging on pooling together. And we have got both the compulsory contribution and voluntary contribution. Now, let me tell you why this housing fund is actually going to go to the line as the most disputed. In 1 second, in 15 seconds.
Because we must also pay bills.
I would actually be through. I would actually be through.
Proposals on advertising.
The only reason why the housing fund is actually going to be fought is that you have got 1 million new jobs created for the next 7-10 years. And that you have got about 300 new housing units. You bring down the cost of housing to the level that probably this will be William Ruto's greatest legacy, because on all the other fronts, we've actually achieved so much. They are going to bring it down because they know the impact. The people in Azimio are not stupid. They're very brilliant. And they know that the housing project is a mover. It's actually something that is going to change the nation. And they want to push it to the end because for them, everything that is William Ruto is wrong.
We need to take a break. But Ishmael, Fred, immediately you come back from this break, first ones to speak.
Twister box for only $7.50. NBA, KFC, balling all day.
Ready to showcase your football talent? The wait is over. Safaricom Chapa Dimba is back. Bigger, bolder, and better. Safaricom is on the hunt for the next big footballing sensation. Register your team. Visit chapadimba.safaricom.co.ke and you too can be the next football star. Cheza kama wewe.
The CA Kuza Broadcasting Awards 2023 is here. Vote for NTV for the Kuza People's Choice Awards. SMS the word Kuza to 15601. Follow the prompts and press send. Voting is absolutely free. Cast your vote for excellence in broadcasting. The CA Kuza Awards is an initiative of the Communications Authority of Kenya. NTV, turning on your world of local entertainment.
Cascadia Apartments at Two Rivers Development in Nairobi with a Madaraka offer till 30th June 2023. Price start from 9.2 million. Call us today on 0742 342 722 or text Cascadia to 22365.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. With me in studio, this is who we have. We have Fred Okango, Secretary, Political Affairs, KANU, and Azimio spokesperson, Maliba Arnold, Public Policy Analyst, Mark Bichachi, Communication Strategist, Ishmael Nyaribo, Advocate and Political Analyst. And I did promise you, Ishmael, right of reply.
Now, I really like to be straightforward. Whose houses are these houses going to be? How many Kenyans don't have houses, and when are they going to access these houses? All Kenyans, all hustlers. Now, you talk about taxing the worker, the employee. How do you tax me as Ishmael, who is not employed by the government of Kenya to support the housing project? So these are the issues that people are not happy about. And the procedure being used to implement the housing project is actually quite ununderstandable. If you looked at PS Hinga, am I right? PS Hinga.
Yes.
You saw that other than sweating and you know, just really trying to go away from the podium, no Kenyan could understand exactly what is he saying, so that people can actually embrace that particular project. So, Olive, the housing project has been there before Kenya Kwanza, and in the former regime, Uhuru Kenyatta was trying to really make sure there is enough houses for people, rent is reduced. But sensitive governments normally know that if we go this direction, the masses will not go with us. Therefore, there is no need to actually try to push it. Like you saw how Arnold is really trying to philosophize and explain, and the painstaking words he's using, I mean, with tremendous respect. That is the problem with the taxation in this country. You will explain Kenyans how you want them to be taxed. Kenyans are stuck. Can I have cheap flour so I can cook for my children? And if you are talking about housing, people in the rural areas, they have their own houses. How are you going to involve them in making sure they support a housing project that they will not own?
All right. The fact that we have spent the better part of this morning discussing this question of the housing fund tells you just how close it is to people's, I mean, at least how contentious an issue it is. And I'm just flipping over to look at some of the other stories, some of the other articles that have been written on this subject. But even as I do so, when I look at the Daily Nation editorial cartoon, housing, an image there of GOK in a helicopter. There's some who are asking why the taxes on helicopter parts are exempt now. And Kenyans, one with an empty bowl, it looks like, underneath there. When I look at the Standard, I see a question of, and somebody, Arnold is the one who used the term gaslighting. I'm not entirely sure. Gaslighting is a term that for many of us, it's a concept we really don't know how to we haven't yet wrapped our minds around, but maybe the communication specialist in the room will explain. But another one here, a red herring or remedy for shelter shortage. And on page 25 of the Star, which is where I was trying to get, let us see, 25, am I almost there? I see that Boni Halwale was heckled for defending the housing fund. Am I there yet? 2 pages down. Is this, okay, here we go. Here, Halwale heckled for defending Ruto taxes at Kakamega funeral. All right, so a lot on these contentious taxes, including the editorial cartoon in the Standard. This is on page 16. And on one side, I saw cost of living. On the other side, I saw, what is it called? So here we go. Taxation, and Kenyans are caught in between. These two, I see Kidi Mwaga, who is also regular on this show, has talked about government, rather penned an op-ed on government yet to make serious efforts to lower the cost of living. Again, that is an issue on the table. But also back to this issue of but we are staying, it's still an issue on this bipartisan talks. There's been the question of self-determination. And Raila Odinga gave a week. He said otherwise he'll be writing to the United Nations for the Kenya Kwanza administration to correct, because he said most of these jobs are going to one eneo, so one region. So he gave a week for a correction to be made that these jobs are for all Kenyans, regardless of whether they're considered to have voted in favor or against the Kenya Kwanza government. Fred.
Olive, you know, Arnold tells us that consultation is not concurrence. Well, but in public governance, we are talking about participation, not only consultation. We are going beyond consultation. And as a constitutional principle, for effective public participation to happen, then the views of the public must be factored in the final decision making. And that's why the Constitution gives us public participation as a principle, right from Article 1, where the people can actually say, no, our representatives do not represent us. So we are going to get in this consultation or participation by ourselves. But that aside, they have told us, and Arnold just realized that defending a regime that is not pro-people is becoming a nightmare. Right in this studio, you can see that. So they have said that this is akin to a shareholders limited company, where the only people that have got a right to enjoy the benefit of governance are the shareholders. We have agreed. We have told them, gentlemen, we are not shareholders by the virtue that we are not in this regime. And therefore, because we are non-shareholders, we don't feel the sense of belonging. Remember, in every public appointment, the principle requires that there must be, and you must imply, the inclusion, the ethnic diversity of the people of Kenya, so that that appointment must reflect the ethnic and diversity of the people of Kenya. I give you statistics that they keep throwing, and then they can check this also. In every 5 appointments, 3 are from one tribe or 2 tribes. Does that reflect the regional and ethnic diversity of the people of Kenya? It doesn't. And therefore, majority of the people feel that because they have consistently said this is a shareholders, for sure, they are operating the country like a shareholders. And that's why the discussions of secession are coming. I accompanied the former Prime Minister and our coalition leader, Raila Odinga, to Yatta Farm, where we had a Thanksgiving on Saturday. And all the speakers, including the public, they said, we actually don't belong. We feel we don't belong. But that's aside. For us, we strongly believe that the unity of this country is more important than anything else. And that's why in all our submissions, we are trying to remind our colleagues from Kenya Kwanza that if we don't unite as a country, if we don't demonstrate that we all belong to this country, then there are chances of us believing that this country is not ours. Those are discussions that will be tabled another day. But I just wanted to remind us, because you said that these are issues that are finding themselves as conditions in the bipartisan talk. I just wanted to bring something. On 17th of May, 2023, the two sides, if you recall, brought in issues that they thought would be important to be discussed as interim measures before the substantive issues of the talk are raised. For Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party, we raised these issues we're talking about now. Measures, interim measures to lower the cost of living. Not as a substance issue this time, but as interim measure. We again said the cessation of interference of Azimio political parties, principally Jubilee. Mark Bichacha has talked about it. We said also the preservation of 2022 presidential election servers. We raised that. And again, we also raised the issue of cessation of the recruitment of IBC commissioners. Yesterday, Honorable Mrugara wrote to our co-chair, Chenda Molo, and asked for a meeting this afternoon on a co-chair's meeting. Surprise, surprise, they have not addressed the issues of interim measure, while on our end as Azimio, we have substantively addressed their interim measures. Their interim measure number one is the cessation of Mandamano. We are not undermining now, we have stopped. The other one, the cessation of utterances that would jeopardize the talk. Look at what they are doing. Their majority leader yesterday, talking and undermining the former president, who is our coalition chair. And those are talks that are careless, reckless, and heartless that will undermine these talks. Okay. We strongly believe that as we go into these talks, as we try and find our way into these talks, as we try and understand, and they also should understand, we are holding the firm belief that our intentions are pure. We have said that. Our goals are patriotic, and the people of Kenya are sovereign. And that's why the issues of cost of living, we have put it as an interim measure. Kenya Kwanza should employ interim measures to lower the cost of living. Okay. Even as we go, we cannot talk while the people of Kenya are sleeping angry, as Mark Bichaji said it.
All right. Arnold, because you had said Azimio keeps shifting goalposts. So you said today it is open the servers, tomorrow it is something else. But on this issue of self-determination, the issue of taxation without representation, I was actually trying to find a tweet I saw of yours, Fred, but I can't seem to find it. I'll look for it later. But when President William Ruto talked about yesterday in Busia that, you know, at the very start of his speech, he made a point about we are working for all Kenyans. Is that in response to the pressure that is coming out of the Azimio side on this question of the statements on shareholding?
Even as a response to that, it's important to actually underscore this, that one of the reasons why this particular administration is actually coming off as if it's not pro-people is three reasons. Number one, we have got what I would call bluntly a nefarious opposition that is not honest in anything. You look at the reason why they actually pushed the talks, they stalled the talks. You know, why are they bringing in Jubilee, for example? You know, are people who are telling this administration that it's actually fighting democracy are the people who actually changed the Political Parties Act against everybody's complaints then, introducing very strange things like a coalition party, and up to date as we speak, over 20 members, political members who signed things in KICC, and I was seated in this studio. When you say those people are signing what we don't know, we have seen that particular end. That a group of people who could not even allow their partners to read what they were signing are now telling us about democracy. So, number one, the opposition we have, it's not easy to deal with the free Raila Odinga moving around there. He is actually quite a combatant, so it's not easy. When he spoke, I didn't raise my voice. So, this is the point.
Okay,
the truth is that he is the embodiment of the opposition, and without him, a lot of those guys cannot organize. That's the fact. That's why even the former president has to queue behind Raila Odinga to lead an assault against William Ruto. It's Raila the person, and on the day Raila actually shakes hands with William Ruto, the rest of those people, you'll not hear about them. So, number one was actually a very difficult opposition to deal with. Number two, and I know you will actually look at me and feel like probably I'm not sure about what I'm saying. The media space has been very hostile to this administration. That is true. You can call it trivia, but just look at the headline of the Standard, for example. Graphic designers, and I know those guys have got better graphic designers, as in wanakata mpaka masikio ya rais. That is how bad those guys are. The media is so hostile. Number three. Can I proceed, please?
Hawajakata masikio ya rais. Let me just
No. Number three.
Because hapo kidogo umeonea Standard.
Number three.
Here it is.
Number three, the regime itself is nascent. We can't lie about that. And it has not really, this one falls squarely on the government. They have not communicated very well. That particular bit, there's an element of a nascent regime that is stuck, because you realize that only William comes off to communicate well. So you're speaking about self-determination. On 30th of January in 2018, I was at Uhuru Park. I have said this before, that ever since I became an adult, I have voted for Raila Odinga throughout. But on 30th of January 2018, I was at Uhuru Park. If you went to my old Facebook, you will actually find I was there streaming live as the whole nation was tensed. And we were talking about going our separate ways. Looking forward, then I have looked at what has happened going on from that end. And then you realize that it's actually so unfair that we are Kenyans when it matters. And he spoke about numbers. I need to bring that up because we really want to run away with that. He spoke about out of every 5 appointments, 3 are from one community or 2. You know, there's something, all of us as a people are equal before the law. But somehow, if, for example, I come from Matungu, Matungu is in Mumias, Mumias is in Kakamega, that if I were appointed and I am not a Raila endorsed person, and I'll be blunt on this, he was actually shy of not talking about the communities. If you actually are implying, then go full blast. If I am appointed today as a Wanga, if I am not endorsed from a certain quarter, then I am not a Wanga proper. The same also applies from people who are getting jobs, for example, from Nyanza, from people who are getting jobs from Eastern, for example, and even Coast. That just because they are not the endorsed people, the preferred people of a certain political wing, then they are not representative enough. That you can have Eliud Owalo for all it cares, but he is not low enough to represent Nyanza. That you can have the chief of the defense forces, but so long as it is not on the watch of so-and-so, he is not fully representative of that particular end. That level of dishonesty must actually be called out. And that is why I said, in the name of oversight, in the name of calling out bad governance, we should also be very careful not to assail the country, not to fight our own country. These guys have mobilized the whole country using the cost of living, which when they were on duty, when they were on watch, they said tunabweka. When people are talking about the cost of living, some of those aspects were much higher. Then they said watu wanabweka. But now, it is now, that level of convenience when it comes to political talk should not be allowed to go without really being challenged. So, we are Kenya. We are struggling to build a nation. Of course, we are a country. And I believe, honestly, that we are not yet a nation. We are a country, but not yet a nation. It's a difficult job because we are building slowly coming up. I was a teenager who could read newspapers in 2004 and 2005. Kibaki was so unpopular. Today, all the people who are telling you how Kibaki did very well, the headlines in 2005 and 2004 against Kibaki were so hostile. But wasn't he doing the right thing? He was doing the right thing. You know, opposition communication is so easy. I just need to say that Olive is wrong.
All right.
And repeat that continuously until people say Olive is wrong, even when he is not.
All
so
right.
It's unfair just because Raila did not win last year's election for him now to force that he wants a country of his own to become president.
Mark, you disagree?
This honesty is so bad. On Jubilee, for example,
okay.
who's asailing Jubilee?
Mark and Ishmael
the president who was being held in Nigeria is now coming back to fight with Sabina Chege. Honestly, the continent needs him. He should not come and fight with his mentees.
Okay, all right.
Mark. I have suffered for the last 5 minutes. And the reason I have suffered is because as someone who practices communication, as someone who's written articles for the paper, and someone who does international correspondence, I am very worried when people begin to say, when media asks questions, they are being hostile. This is not the People's Republic of China, neither is it Turkey, or any of those dictatorial countries. Any person holding public office should be held accountable by the public. The fact that you get offended because people don't like your ideas and ways of doing things tells me exactly what is wrong with you. Can we stop this idea, this nonsensical idea that when media calls you out, then they're doing a wrong thing? We have one government in this country. There's only one thing to complain about. And let me remind Kenya Kwanza how they got into power. They spent every day criticizing everything Uhuru Kenyatta did, including this housing thing they're doing. And that's how they got into power. You cannot cast the bridge that got you where you are going. So let us continue to be democratic, number one. Number two, let's be very clear. This characterization of Azimio is full of necessarily evil people who are stopping the government from working. Come on. Since when did talking stop anyone from doing anything? And if, just hold on, since when? And two, if you're talking about Maandamano, let me remind Kenyans that there was Maandamano somewhere in Rift Valley the other day. The only difference is the police didn't lob tear gas at them. Let's be clear. Maandamano does not stop anything from happening. Violence does.
This is to do with the machines, the tea farms.
No, there was a demonstration in the Rift where people were complaining about the cost of living and other things. Yes. So the thing is, you cannot create a violent thing and then say all Maandamano are bad. Because again, and let's be Democrats, this constitution enshrines the ability and the freedom for anyone to demonstrate. Olive, I can wake up tomorrow, come downstairs and say I don't like Olive Barrow's hair. Imagine that's my constitutional right. And there's nothing wrong with it. We need to stop. We need to really, really stop this very undemocratic speak that we are holding in this country. Lastly, let me tell you, the day you are in opposition, you should wake up every day for 5 years to point out what is wrong with the government. That is why opposition exists. And let me give advice. In any country where you have stifled the opposition that removes you becomes your own people. Just ask Mugabe and ask many other people who stifled opposition. Lastly, on Jubilee, becoming an ex-president does not rob you of your political rights. Uhuru Kenyatta is a hero of this country. He has the right to have followers, he has the right to lead a party, and he has a right also to argue with Sabina Chege if he so pleases. There is this idea that somehow Uhuru Kenyatta should stop being political is nonsensical, and it is the same kind of killing the political space in this country that we are doing. Listen, if Uhuru Kenyatta is not a threat and he only has followers in my good friend Pauline Njoroge and myself, then imagine just give us the right to follow him, the two of us. Why my friend, there is freedom of association and freedom to politic. Uhuru Kenyatta has chosen to continue leading Jubilee. Let him do so. What is your problem? What will happen? The temperature in hell is going to get hotter or colder? Or State House, the AC won't work? Come on. Right. Let's be serious as a country.
All right, now, Ishmael, speaking of former President Uhuru Kenyatta, he was in Nigeria. Uhuru asks leaders to embrace handshakes. He says, winner take all attitude not sustainable. Most conflicts in Africa are due to propagating sectarian interests. And is he on to something? And I ask that because I look at the editorial cartoon on the Standard and I ask you this, Ishmael, is this what these politicians are succeeding in doing? And it's an image of Rigathi Gachagua saying, faster, we are shareholders, we take the biggest. Raila Odinga being quoted as saying secession. And William Ruto here with, what is this thing called? This type of saw. Yes.
I think the hate against, the vitriol hate against Raila Odinga as a person should be stopped in this country completely. What Uhuru Kenyatta is doing in Nigeria is showcasing how Kenya runs its business. And he was lauded globally the moment he shook Raila Odinga's hands. There is, I don't know whether I call it cultural or community-based hate against a particular individual, which has not actually come to any fruition in Kenya. It has never assisted or helped anyone. So when Arnold says that the military got a big seat, I don't know which came from
that was an example,
Nyanza or something.
There.
I think we need to make this representative leadership is totally different from professional appointments. In fact, mere mention of that actually made me shiver because that's not the area you want to go. There is nothing political about a person being named Major General. Of course, there are those behind the scenes political considerations, but you can't say that Raila should be excited that a person from his Luo-speaking Nyanza has been appointed to lead the military. They probably are not connected or related in any manner other than the fact that one is a professional military person and the other one is a politician, a politician in the opposition. And like Mark Bichacha said, it is the role of the opposition to continuously put the government on toes, and the government should not be mad about it. In fact, the president said clearly that opposition should be encouraged to do what they do. Why things have changed is because the executive seems to have raided opposition and picked everybody who seems to be supporting Raila Odinga and therefore have been made to now support Kenya Kwanza and through the example of Jubilee. So when Uhuru Kenyatta goes out to showcase the success stories about Kenya, first of all, we should be happy. Rather than calling him names, rather than saying that is he still involved in politics, he has gone to show Africa that there is no need to have people fighting every other elections. You can actually shake hands. Now, William Ruto has confirmed that he doesn't want to shake hands, but he has clearly said he wants a strong opposition. In fact, he wants to create an office for the opposition and finance the office. So we should not look at Uhuru Kenyatta's involvement in development of Africa and Kenya as anything negative. It is what actually he should do.
I think the issue he was taking, the thing he was taking issue with was his involvement in Jubilee Party politics. Yes, Fred. The other demand that has been made by Azimio of late is calling for the resignation of the registrar of political parties. But President William Ruto had made a counterclaim that Azimio likes to operate outside the law where the law does not suit them.
Maybe if I answer that, Arnold said that Raila is the embodiment of opposition. You know, Arnold cannot make such remarks when I'm seated on this table because I represent the Azimio coalition and I speak for them. And I want to tell Arnold that as we are today, the current system of governance, actually, even his own MP is an opposition member. If we talk about proper oversight, that is the system that we have. The members of parliament, the oversight, that is their role. So we cannot always say Raila is the embodiment of opposition. Everyone can decide to be opposition if they so wish. Raila Odinga is speaking for the majority. Raila Odinga is addressing the issues that are affecting both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. Raila Amolo Odinga, Martha Karua, Kalonzo Musyoka and team are addressing issues that are of concern to the majority of the people of Kenya. Number two, the issue of multi-party democracy that also ties the registrar of political parties is an issue that we outlined as a substantive issue in our bipartisan talks. It was tabled. We said one of the things that we must deal with is the protection and promotion of multi-party democracy. What if you look at if you look at what Kenya Kwanza are doing, they are already trying to gain artificial majority in parliament by influencing the members who are of other parties to come and join them illegally so that they can push their agenda illegally. That is wrong. And that's why we have said we must now go and look at the laws and amend areas that will ensure protection and promotion of multi-party democracy in this country. A case in place. They went and invaded Jubilee by force, by fire. Took the members of parliament to State House and told them that from today henceforth, you are here, you are supporting us. Against their wish. Against their wish. This is not propaganda, this is the truth. We speak to majority of them. They tell us what happened. Now, when President Uhuru Kenyatta visited Jubilee, the day they invaded Jubilee, I was there myself. And we saw what they were doing. The idea is to get a supermajority so that they can try and influence the outcome in the floor of the House and also amend the provisions of law that require 2/3. Okay? That will not happen. We are saying that when you touch one constituent Azimio party, you actually touch the entire Azimio.
Right.
That, just hold on. That's why
I am being told that we are now on borrowed time. So yes, if you can conclude in 30 seconds. Please.
Let me just finish. And that's why we are saying in all these issues, we are the only side of the bipartisan talk that have tabled cogent issues that are core to the people. They're telling us they want to amend the constitution to create the office of official opposition. Fair enough. But they're not telling us how we are first going to address the issue of high cost of living as an interim measure and as a substantive issue. They are saying that we must move on. We must put a closure to the 2022 general election, and that's why we want preservation of the servers. They are telling us, let's talk, but they don't want to suspend the selection panel that is recruiting commissioners. We are telling them that that is an issue that we must come to the table with open hands and at most good faith. We are submitting today that as we go into this, the people of Kenya and their founding fathers did not anticipate a situation where the people will be overtaxed to prosperity. It's not that way.
Arnold, as briefly as possible.
Yes, I'll just name them. Number one, when I spoke about Raila being the embodiment of opposition, that is a fact. I was born on Saturday, but not last Saturday. Any Kenyan will tell you so. He is the Secretary of Political Affairs, KANU. Have you ever seen even his party leader in a single demonstration or even doing a presser? He's not there to be seen. What was I arguing initially? I actually was saying that oversight is all allowed, opposition is all allowed, but let us not polarize the nation. When we polarize the nation, we lose it out. On the housing levy that people are making noise about it is a mover. It's about three things. It's about reducing rent eventually. It's about reducing the cost of mortgage. And it's about creating a sector that will create jobs. So wherever you are, let no one tell you that the finance bill in entirety is wrong. The finance bill, out of pragmatism, should be looked at as item per item, not wholesale.
All right.
Thank you so much. KANU has no party leader. KANU has a chairman.
Well, it's still the same. Where is the chairperson? Where is he? That's the question.
Right.
The chairperson is well and alive.
He's only attending weddings. Nothing political.
His son's wedding. We want to conclude. We will conclude him live at this point. With us, I'm really Mark and Ishmael. Mark, pick a bone with Arnold. Fred Okango, who is the secretary, as we have been told by Arnold here, political affairs, KANU, and he's also as new spokesperson. We've had in studio as well Arnold Maliba, who is a public policy analyst, Mark Bichachi, communication strategist, as well as Ishmael, and he is a Nyeribo advocate and political analyst. My name is Faraz. Have a good morning.